It was just after 4:30 in the morning when the tracking app on Sade Robinson's phone suddenly went dark. Earlier that night, she had left work excited. Her first date with someone new, a man she'd recently met. By sunrise, her car was in flames, and along the shoreline of Lake Michigan, something unthinkable was waiting to be found. What happened during those missing hours would shock an entire city and expose a nightmare no one saw coming. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Sade Robinson was born in 2004 in Biggsburg, Mississippi. She was the only child of China Scarborough and Carlos Robinson. Her life changed early on. When she was just a year old, her parents separated. Sade then moved with her mother to Milwaukee, settling into the home of her grandparents. This city would become the backdrop of her formative years and the place where her vibrant personality began to bloom. From the start, Sade stood out. She was curious, energetic, and always eager to learn about the world around her. Whether she was playing soccer or participating in the Girl Scouts, she threw herself into every activity with enthusiasm. These early experiences not only allowed her to shine, but also helped shape her natural skills in leadership, teamwork, and discipline. Though her father lived in Florida, Sade maintained a close bond with him. Frequent visits between states became a routine part of her life, and through them, she developed a rare sense of independence and responsibility at a young age. As she grew older, Sade's passions began to take clearer form. She was drawn to the arts, especially rap music and dance, where she could express herself freely. But her dreams weren't limited to the creative world. She also felt a deep desire to serve her country and envisioned herself someday joining the armed forces. Her academic record was equally impressive. Sade was known as a standout student, always focused and determined. Yet even with her achievements, she wasn't immune to challenges. During 7th grade, she encountered difficulties at school, though the specifics were never made public. As a result, she made the brave decision to relocate to Florida and live with her father, seeking a fresh start. Once again, Sade showed resilience. In her new environment, she continued to excel both socially and academically. Teachers and peers alike admired her focus, her ambition, and her quiet confidence, one that was rooted in strength rather than pride. In 2019, after spending several years in Florida, she returned to Milwaukee to live with her mother. When her final year of high school arrived in 2021, Sade poured herself into her studies, managing to graduate an entire semester early, yet another example of her unwavering determination. By 2024, at just 19 years old, Sade Robinson embodied a rare blend of discipline, ambition, and independence. She was pursuing a degree in art at Milwaukee Area Technical College, balancing her education with two full-time jobs. But her ambitions didn't stop there. She had already set her sights on a future in criminal law. Through sheer effort and careful saving, Sade Robinson was able to accomplish a major milestone. She bought her own car. It was more than just a vehicle, it represented her growing independence. Not long after, she moved out of her mother's home and rented her very own apartment. She balanced two demanding jobs to support herself. One of them was at Pizza Shadow, where her work ethic, discipline, and initiative didn't go unnoticed. She quickly rose through the ranks and was promoted to manager. Her second job was at the prestigious Wisconsin Country Club, where she also helped her younger sister secure a position, making sure her sibling had access to the same opportunities that had shaped her own path. Sade wasn't just building a life for herself. She was helping pave the way for those she loved. At that moment, her future looked incredibly bright. She had clear goals, the discipline to chase them, and the kind of maturity most people twice her age hadn't yet reached. Yet behind all of that strength and focus, Sade still carried the hopes of any young woman her age. She dreamed of love, companionship, and a meaningful connection. What she never expected was that this search would lead her into the most dangerous moment of her life. April 1st, 2024, began like any other day for Sade. She started her morning shift at Pizza Shadow and, as she often did, took a few moments before work to catch up with her mother over FaceTime. Everything about the day seemed routine until her shift ended. Sade was excited. That evening, she had a date planned with a man she had recently met through a dating app. She left work and headed to meet him. That decision marked the last time anyone in her circle would ever see or hear from her again. The following day, April 2nd, Sade failed to show up for her shift. Her absence was immediately noticed. She hadn't called in sick, hadn't left a message, and that was completely out of character. Concern quickly spread among her co-workers. They began texting her, calling her phone, hoping for an explanation, but no reply came. Her family and close friends also began to worry. None of them had heard from her since the day before. As hours passed with no word, worry turned into panic. Those closest to her knew something was wrong. This wasn't just a missed call. This was a chilling silence that didn't make sense. As night fell and still no answers emerged, one of Sade's friends made the difficult but necessary choice to contact the police and report her missing. Before doing so, she checked Sade's most recent social media activity and found something crucial. A Snapchat post showed that Sade had been at a place called Duke's. The timestamp was around 9 p.m. on the night of April 1st. That would be the final digital trace she left behind. On April 3rd, with no updates and mounting concern, police officers went to Sade's apartment. They knocked on the door. There was no answer. No sounds came from within. But what no one knew then was that, elsewhere in the city, authorities had made a horrifying discovery. At around 7:30 in the morning on April 2nd, 2024, the Milwaukee Fire Department received a report from local residents. A car was on fire. When emergency crews arrived at the scene, they were met with thick smoke and flames engulfing a 2020 Honda Civic. The vehicle had been abandoned and was now burning rapidly. Firefighters managed to contain the blaze. No one was inside the car. But when they opened the trunk, what they discovered raised immediate concern. A black coat, a pair of ripped jeans, and other women's clothing, charred but still identifiable. A cell phone was also recovered, partially damaged by heat. The authorities now had physical evidence, but they still needed to know who the car belonged to. That answer would come soon, and it would change everything. Later that same day, Milwaukee County Sheriff's deputies were called to a different location. A man waiting for a friend had been walking along the edge of the park's beach when he stumbled upon something horrifying, a human leg lying near the shoreline. Forensic teams were called in. After careful analysis, they determined the leg belonged to an African American female. The remains were dismembered, but the condition of the limbs suggested the crime had occurred recently. As the investigation into the disappearance of Sade continued, one of the officers who had earlier visited her apartment learned of the discovery of human remains. The physical description of the remains, a petite African American woman, closely matched the details provided in the missing persons report for Sade. Then, a second chilling confirmation arrived. The Honda Civic found burning that morning? It was registered to Sade Robinson. With the pieces beginning to fall into place, detectives returned to her apartment. They spoke with the building's maintenance worker, who revealed he had seen Sade on the morning of April 1st. She seemed excited, he said. She was looking forward to a date after her shift at work. Investigators pulled the building's surveillance footage. It showed Sade leaving her apartment at 9 a.m. on April 1st. She never came back. That footage, combined with the evidence from the car and the park, created an urgent new direction for the case. Authorities subpoenaed her phone records from her mobile carrier. They traced her last text message, sent to a number with a 262 area code. They didn't yet know who the number belonged to, but the content of the exchange made it clear. It was the man she had planned to meet that night. Using that lead, police began cross-referencing phone data with surveillance. It soon emerged that Sade and her date had met at a local venue called the Twisted Fisherman. Footage from the bar and witness statements from staff confirmed their presence at the location that evening. Another key piece of evidence came from the same friend who had filed the missing persons report. She revealed that she had access to Sade's location through an app called Life 360, commonly used to track friends and family in real time. According to the app's log, the last known location for Sade Robinson was Warner Mon Park at 4:30 a.m. on April 2nd. A clearer timeline began to take shape. Investigators learned that she was originally scheduled to meet her date at 5 p.m. on April 1st at a place called Brad House. However, at the last minute, the man changed the location to a different venue, Twisted Fisherman, a bar where he had previously worked. He claimed he needed to stop by to pick up some paperwork. Sade had no objection. At 5:20 p.m., she arrived at Twisted Fisherman. He was already there, waiting at the bar. The two sat side by side, ordered drinks and food, and chatted casually as the evening unfolded. Just over an hour later, they left the bar together, got into Sade's car, and drove to a second location, Duke's, another bar. They spent roughly 3 hours at Duke's before heading to a residential neighborhood in the southwestern part of Milwaukee. There, they remained for several more hours. At some point in the early morning hours of April 2nd, Sade's phone showed movement once again, this time heading toward Warner Mon Park. At 4:35 a.m., her Life 360 tracking app went silent. The battery had died. That was the last signal the phone would ever send. The mounting evidence led investigators to a grim realization. This was no longer a missing persons case. It was a homicide. All signs pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Sade Robinson had been murdered, and the person she had trusted enough to meet that night was now the prime suspect. Thanks to swift and coordinated work by law enforcement, the investigation progressed rapidly. Authorities had already zeroed in on one individual. Though his name was still unknown to the public, police knew he was the last person to see Sade alive. The evidence they had gathered was enough to obtain both an arrest warrant and a search warrant for the residence traced from Sade's phone activity. On April 4th, at 1 p.m., officers moved in. They arrived at the suspect's home and took him into custody. His identity was finally confirmed. Maxwell Anderson, a 33-year-old man and the son of a well-known businessman in the region. Following his arrest, disturbing details about his background began to emerge. Throughout his life, Anderson had exhibited a pattern of problematic behavior. His own father had once tried to help him by giving him a position in the family business, but eventually fired him, stating that he was unfit for the job. Anderson was also a U.S. Navy veteran, but in recent years, he had drifted from one job to the next, working primarily as a bartender in various establishments across Milwaukee. None of the positions lasted long. Between 2014 and 2019, he had multiple arrests on record, mostly for minor offenses such as public disorder and disturbances. Investigators worked to determine exactly how Sade and Anderson first met. The initial assumption was that they had connected through a dating app. But another theory surfaced. They may have crossed paths in person at one of the bars where Anderson had worked, locations that Sade and her friends were known to frequent. Following the arrest of Maxwell Anderson, detectives launched an extensive search of his residence. What they found inside confirmed their worst fears. In one of the bedrooms, investigators discovered bloodstains on the bedding and on a wall leading down to the basement. That area, they soon realized, held even more disturbing clues. Inside the basement, they located multiple gas canisters and electric saws, items that raised immediate suspicion. The basement wasn't just a storage area. It appeared to have been prepared for something dark, something planned. The space, now a central point in the investigation, suggested that the crime against Sade had been both premeditated and executed with chilling precision. The search for evidence did not stop there. On April 6th, just days after the house search, investigators returned to the area where Sade's burned car had been discovered. Just 1 block away, they made another gruesome find: a human foot. Forensic analysis confirmed what everyone feared. The skin tone, size, and pink nail polish matched the severed leg recovered earlier. It belonged to Sade. Meanwhile, detectives continued to comb through surveillance footage near the scene of the car fire. It was here they uncovered a critical piece of evidence. Security cameras captured Maxwell Anderson stepping out of Sade's Honda Civic, moments before setting it ablaze. Several bystanders in the area at the time later identified him as the man responsible. After starting the fire, Anderson was seen calmly walking away and boarding a nearby bus. But perhaps the most chilling revelation came from a key witness who knew Anderson personally. Alarmed by the news of Sade's disappearance, the individual went straight to the police. What they shared would reshape the investigation entirely. 1 month before the crime, on March 5th, Anderson had allegedly described a plan to lure a woman to his basement, shoot her, dismember her body, and scatter the remains across the city. At the time, it seemed like a disturbing joke. In retrospect, it was a blueprint. The witness went on to describe a visit to Anderson's house just days before the murder. The basement, they said, was covered in plastic sheeting. There were 3 saws in plain view, a large tarp, and an area that appeared staged with intimate objects, further suggesting the calculated nature of the crime. This discovery set off even more alarms. Authorities feared there could be additional victims. They began re-examining other reports linked to Anderson. In February 2024, a woman came forward claiming that after meeting Anderson at a bar, he invited her to his home. But once there, she began to feel unwell, leading her to suspect he had drugged her drink. She escaped before anything happened. That escape may have saved her life. With mounting evidence, physical, digital, and testimonial, the prosecution built a powerful case. The level of premeditation, the brutality of the acts, and the effort to destroy evidence pointed to one clear conclusion: On April 12th, just 10 days after Sade Robinson vanished, Maxwell Guel Anderson was formally charged with first-degree homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and arson to conceal a crime. Though Anderson continued to claim innocence, the case against him was overwhelming. On the morning of June 6, 2025, the courtroom in Milwaukee was silent, tense. Families, reporters, and community members filled every seat. After months of grief, outrage, and unanswered questions, the moment had finally arrived. The jury had reached its decision. It took less than a day of deliberation. By 9 a.m. the next morning, their verdict was ready. When the judge called the room to order, everyone held their breath. Maxwell Anderson, found guilty on all counts: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, hiding a corpse, arson. It was official. The man who had lured 19-year-old Sade Robinson on a first date, only to brutally kill and dismember her, was now legally responsible for one of the most horrifying crimes Milwaukee had ever seen. The trial had laid bare every excruciating detail. Jurors were shown hundreds of surveillance images and forensic photographs. They listened to the testimony of dozens of witnesses. They saw snapshots of Sade in her final hours, alive, vulnerable, and unaware of the fate awaiting her. The prosecutor made the case clear. Sade was killed inside Anderson's home. He later dismembered her body. Her remains, legs, arms, torso, even her right breast, were scattered across counties. Some found in the lake, others washed ashore. And in an attempt to erase it all, he set her car ablaze and walked away without looking back. Outside the courthouse, Sade's mother stood beneath a gray sky surrounded by friends and supporters, many dressed in pink, her daughter's favorite color. "She will be forever remembered as an angel," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried the weight of unimaginable loss. "Even now, Sade speaks to me. She's still guiding me. Her mission to help others isn't over." Maxwell Anderson never took the stand. His defense presented no witnesses. His attorney argued there was no premeditation. But the evidence told a different story, one that began on a seemingly ordinary night and ended in unthinkable violence. Sade Robinson had dreams. She was studying at Milwaukee Area Technical College, working 2 jobs, building a life. That life was stolen. And now finally, there was accountability. Sentencing is scheduled for August 15th. But for her loved ones, the real sentence is something far greater: life without her. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.